This is the first PowerShell Wednesday to hit YouTube. If you didn't know, every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, we host PowerShell Wednesday on the PDQ Discord. It's an opportunity for us to learn, share things, 30 minutes to an hour, and we get some fantastic speakers like you're about to see today. So check those out live if you can, but a lot of you can't, or a lot of you learn something new and you want to go back to it to keep learning. This is for you. So in this episode, Allman is going to show us all about the pipeline. From basics to more intermediate and even dabbles on some advanced topics. Wherever you are in your PowerShell journey, this talk will help you get to the next step. Any questions you run into, leave them in the comments below, but I think Lucas is going to take us away and take us on a journey. And if you can look past his theme, I'd love to know in the comments below, do you like his theme or not? But let's get into it.
The first thing is I make zero apologies for my VS Code theme, and neither should you. We apply the theme that brings us to the work and keeps us there. And for me, that is my theme, which if anyone is wondering, because that's the most important part, it's called Neon Vomit Night. We're here now. All right, so here we are. This is my theme. And if you're wondering before and you couldn't see it, wow, what could this theme be? There it is, lo and behold. And the theme is called Neon Midnight Vomit. So there you go. Now you know. Okay, we're here to learn about pipelines today. But really, we're here to learn about PowerShell. We're learning basics. If you've got questions, shout them out, or whatever the common way of getting your questions out to Andrew, who'll get them to me. But pipelines is one of the fundamental parts of what makes PowerShell PowerShell. It didn't invent pipelines. They're not new to PowerShell. They existed before PowerShell did, and they existed in Linux and Unix shells. But the developers of PowerShell pulled inspiration from what was already out there. The thing that made PowerShell, and I'm sure everybody here knows this already, the thing that made PowerShell different in that regard was objects. Linux and Unix, it was text-based, so your text coming out of one command and into another command needed to be formatted properly in order to be used. But that's a lot easier when you've got an object. But let's slow this train down, Lucas. Let's talk about some of these things. Let's get into it. So first of all, how are you going to learn about any of this? If you don't have PowerShell Wednesday, if Andrew Pla is not out there pushing the learning, getting everybody on board, raising all boats with his tide, you got to read the friendly manual. And right here we have the about_pipelines document. And it's cryptic, but it will tell you all about pipelines. This is a series of documents that are available for PowerShell called the about topics. You see this starts with about_, and if I bring your eyes to the left part of my screen, you'll see that there's a lot of documents here that start with about_. The about documents. These are basically help documents, but not about a command. They're about a concept, in this case, pipelines. So really great to know that they're there. I'll even try to do it on the fly, throw it into the chat for everybody if they'd like that. You know what? Andrew's going to put it in the chat because he's less busy than I am. He'll find it. He'll Google it. He'll put it in the chat. Really great documents written by people who really know and really love PowerShell. And we're going to go through some of this document today because we all learn differently. Videos and PowerShell Wednesdays and demos, those are all great and legitimate ways to learn. It doesn't have to be reading. It doesn't have to be books. But demos and PowerShell Wednesdays aren't built into PowerShell, and these are. So we're going to start with these, and it's got some really great examples here. So that's what we're going to get into today. But before we get right into pipelines, knowing where to find information and knowing what information you need, that's fundamental to learning, right? And it's no different in PowerShell. So I've shown you about pipelines. I've told you that they are about topics exist. Maybe AI and Andrew, we all forget to put the link in the chat. What are you going to do? One of the wonderful things about the about topics is I will start a new one here, is you can actually access about topics via the get help command in PowerShell. So what that means is you can ignore the errors on my screen and you can type get help about. I left this up for you, Andrew, because it keeps coming up and I just refuse to turn it off. Okay, we'll go back to this now. Um, and it managed to crash uh, my PowerShell for some reason. So you can type get help about underscore pipelines, and oh no, it's taking forever. It's searching. It's not finding it. The presentation is ruined. It's off the rails. No. Little secret, I knew it was going to happen. So here's the thing. If you type get help about pipelines and it gives you an error, it'll take a while for that error to come up, but I'll show it. And it doesn't show you what you want to see. It gives you some error about, I can't find that in the search or in the help. You need to run update help. So if you see something like this, get help, could not find about pipelines, you need to type in update help dash force helps. But know this, update help will update the help for all the modules you have installed. It can take a while, but it's worth doing. Knowledge is power. Learning is worth it. So yeah, this is what you'll see. Update help will solve that problem. We'll move over to PowerShell where it is already working. If I hit up get help about pipelines, lo and behold, look at that. On our shiny background, we've got the about pipelines help page. So this is the exact help page that we just saw on that website. Bonus tip. There's a parameter for get help called show window. So we've got get help about underscore pipelines show window. I don't know if that's hard to see or not. If I do that, what I get, and it's over here somewhere, I'll pull it over. Now you get this window. Again, exact same document. Now you've got a little search thing here. Process. You can look for what you want, but this gives you something separate to have it in. So now I can put it to the side, have it over there while I'm learning about pipelines and doing things in the terminal. Now I've got the help there. So that's what I want to show you about the get help about pipelines. But before we get into pipelines, I got one more. If you'll stick with me, one more get help thing. I know the get help stuff it feels boring because we're not getting into PowerShell, but it's so important to know where to find information and what information you need. So one last thing here is get help about underscore. You can, if you know about tab completion, you can hit tab and it'll tab you through all the different ones that are available. But here's what the cool kids do. I'm going to put an asterisk at the end, a wild card. So find me things that start with this and end with anything. And I'm going to hold Control and press space on my keyboard. And this one's a little long. It's long. It's got a lot of possibilities. So it asks me, "Are you sure you want to output this to the screen?" And I am. And it's going to give me a list of all of the ones that are available because we are basically searching. We're using the get help command to search for any available help page that starts with about underscore. So that's a really good thing, not only because it helps you find help, but also control space, control space, control space. It'll make your life 1,000 times better. If I was to show you an example, here's the get process command. I typed a dash because I'm going to type a parameter name, control space. Look at that. It's all the parameters. And I'm using my arrow keys to move around. Yeah, that's right. That is such a good discovery tool for figuring out what can I do with this command? What does it accept as input? And it gives you a little bit of extra information too. You'll notice at the bottom of my screen in orange, it shows what kind of object that parameter is expecting. In this case, it's a string. So it's looking for text. In fact, it's looking for a string array. So it's looking for one or more string objects. So control space, it's a really great discovery tool. It'll help you out with a bunch of things. Thanks for sticking with me. The get help function is part of that holy trinity of PowerShell commands. And if you haven't heard that before, get help, get command, get member. That's it. Those are the three commands that are going to help you learn and discover so much within PowerShell. Thanks for coming along on that journey. Let's dive in. So pipelines. The concept of pipelines is not overly complicated. You take something from one and you pass it to the next. You take output from one command and you pass it to the input of another command. So that's it. That's the end of it. As a concept, there's not a lot to it. but when we put it into practice, that's where there's things to learn about it, right? So just as a level set here, this character, this is the pipe character. So if you're going to take output and send it to input, you're using this character to do that. So command, pipe character, your next command. You'll usually, depending on your keyboard, you'll usually find that above the enter button, the return button. Sometimes you'll find it to the left if you've got an international keyboard layout. Usually it's with the backslash. Okay? Input and output. Input is really anything you've passed to the input parameters of a command. So before we were using get help and I passed it about pipelines. I didn't write out everything I didn't write out the full parameter name, but if I did, it would have been name and then about pipelines. So that's input, right? And simple concept, but I am sending this set of text about pipelines to the get help command, and it knows what to look for. So what if we had a command that had some output that we would want to give to another command as input? We have the option to write out the parameter names and write values for each parameters, but the pipeline is what lets us chain these commands together and really get something useful and powerful out of it. And we're going to jump into that. But before we get anywhere, I want to talk about one thing. I don't want PowerShell to outsmart you here. PowerShell is a very smart language, a very smart environment. It will do a lot of things behind the scenes to make things work, to make things easy. If you take an integer that's just numbers and you take a string that's just letters, but your string, not just letters, I suppose, if you had a string that was a number, those are two different objects, integer, string. If you try to add them together, PowerShell will say, you know what, I got you. I know what you're trying to do. You've got a 2 over here. You've got a string that has 2 in it over here. You're trying to do math, I'll do 4. Behind the scenes, PowerShell does a lot to make our lives easier. And the same is true with pipelines. So as an example, let's say I use this command, get service, dash name, and we're going to get Andrew's favorite service, the typed it wrong, come on. The performance logs and alerts service, the PLA service. So what did I do here? I used the get service command, and then I gave the letters PLA to the name parameter. So get service took PLA as its input, and its output was this service. You can see that the status is stopped. I could say something like set service. The name of that service is PLA, and I want to set the status to running. And it's not going to let me because I'm not an administrator right now. But that typically would set the status to running. But I could do this set service command by taking the output of get service and piping it. So what does that look like? I have get service dash name pla, and it outputs an object. What is an object? It's a collection of properties, right? I mean, it's a lot deeper than that. There's asterisks all over some of the things I'm saying today, but at its basic level, instead of just having a piece of paper and you've written down red, Ford Focus, ice cream, and you've just handed it to somebody and they have to know what those are answers to and in what order those answers happen. Instead, you've taken 3 index cards and you've labeled them all at the top with a beautiful label maker. And it says the first one is favorite color, and the second one is favorite vehicle, and the third one is favorite thing to apply to a burn to reduce swelling and pain. Now people can look at those index cards and they know exactly what that information is, and they can pull the value from it. Take a little paper clip onto your index cards. That's your object. An object is a collection of information, that's organized, so people know where to find it. That's all it is. So this is outputting an object to the screen. It has many properties. It has more than just status name and display name, but we don't need to look at that. We've got I really should turn this thing off. We've got 3 properties to deal with here. So what I can do is I can use my pipe character to take that object that has a property of status, a name of plaw, or a status of stop, sorry, a name of plaw, a display name of performance logs and alerts. And I can pipe that to that same set service command that we used above. Set service, and I'll give it the status of runout. So the difference here is I haven't told set service what service I want to set the status of. I've gotten an object from the get service command, and I've taken the output of that command and passed it to set service and then told it, I want you to turn this to running. And if I run that, again, same error, but you could imagine how wowed you would be by the fact that it worked. What I want to point out here is when I did this the first way and I said name is pla, I've provided some text, some letters to the set service command. I said, what service do I want to change? The pla command, PLA. When I piped it, I sent a whole object to the set service command. And I find that that can sometimes be a sticking point. How can this command know exactly what to do with the object that's coming in? It's got a lot more than just a text, a piece of text for its name. It's got status. It's got a display name. If we really got into it, we could use one of our Holy Trinity commands, get member, and see it's got a whole lot more to offer us. It's got its binary path name, services that it's dependent on. I could pipe it to, and by the way, these are great examples of piping to other commands. I could pipe that object to format list, so it gives us a broader view of that object with an asterisk maybe. And you can see these are all properties of that command, or that object that came out of that command. So how does it know, how can it take an object and know what to do with it? And it's called parameter binding, and you don't need to know what it is, but it means that PowerShell is smart. And behind the scenes, PowerShell has instructions in well-written commands that say, if you get text from the parameters, do things this way. If you get an object from the parameters, look for this property, or something of this value. So behind the scenes, it's got a lot of instructions to handle different situations. I find that can be a bit of a sticking point because it's not the same sending text. I think I could even do something like, even with get service, I could say, here's flaw, here's just the text, and just pipe that text. Not even the output of a command, just here's 3 letters, and pipe it to get service. I think, yeah, even that would work. So well-written code in PowerShell can handle these situations. It's not magic. It's just it's got a checklist of things to look for. So don't let it outsmart you. Don't let it intimidate you.
Hey,
Sometimes having some. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so Sean shared a cool resource about visualize parameter binding. Check that out from the comments of this. Not you don't have to check it out now, but it's just an additional
No, I
resource
just
to help
realized I could put
visualize.
this somewhere else.
Oh,
There you
nice.
go.
And I think you covered something that someone was also talking about in the chat that I wanted to make sure we drove home for them, which was objects and their properties, right? So you run get service and you'll see a few properties, and then you showed sending that to select object star or format table star or whatever, whichever one you used. And that's how you can actually see what's a little bit more what's inside the object, because it's more than just text on the screen. It's an object. They have types. There's methods as well, things like that, which I believe you showed, but just reiterating it for Dustin.
Yeah, no, totally. That's another one of those ways that I say PowerShell is outsmarting us, but really what I mean is PowerShell is helping us. PowerShell is our smart coworker who just they know what we need before we even tell it that we need it. And a lot of times you'll see that there are commands that output objects that are heavily verbose. They've got lots of properties, very long values to them. If it always put all of that to the screen, our workspace would get cluttered very easily. It'd be hard to follow things, right? So a lot of times commands are built with a set of instructions that say, when you display to the screen, just show them the important stuff. Show them this, this, and this. That's all they really want. If they want more, they'll find it. But this is what's helpful. So, again, it's about discovery. It's about knowing those tools, knowing how to find out more about what's in front of you. And yeah, piping to format list is a great way to see, okay, what else is in this particular object. Great call out.
Can
Okay.
we just one more, because you just kind of had a little bit of a fault. Can we look at an object real quick and then just show the different properties one more time, just to differentiate what's an object and what are the properties? Boom. So now we have a variable.
Do you want to see the actual values, or you want to see the get member output?
We can look at get member output. I think that's a great one of those Trinity commands you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
Always a good way to investigate objects.
Yeah. So I'm just for the uninitiated, get member is going to show you everything that an object has available to you. It's not going to show you the values of properties, but it's going to show you not only pieces of information that object has, but other pieces too, things called methods, which are basically little commands that live within the object. Again, asterisks to all of that, not today's not today's lesson. Remember, I can't spell. So, looking at this object in particular, it's got some methods up here. We don't need to get into methods necessarily, but it's showing me here's all the properties. Here's all the properties and what data type they are. So, another great way to dive into things. Is there something else on that one, Andrew, that you wanted to dive into?
I think the object type at the top is also a good call out.
Good call. So we've got one here that's it's a very long and very specific object type, and you'll find this within PowerShell. And I don't want to necessarily go down a deep rabbit hole of things that I would probably not accurately describe. But this object that I got from the get service member, it has a type of system.service.service controller startup type. It's very specific, and somebody programmed that. When they made the get service command, they said, you know what, it's going to output a new kind of data type, and it's going to be called this, and here's all of the ways that data type is shaped. But at the end of the day, and we'll kind of do something like this. You can see here the object had a method called getType, which is like a kind of like a command built into the object. So the object is here, and you can ask it to run a command, and it'll give you that output from the command. You can see here I said getType. It's a command that is, or a method that is supposed to tell me the type of that object. The name, you can see down here, it's the short version of it, service controller. It didn't give me the system.whatever. It's a service controller data type. And its base type, I was hoping this would be something more base than component type, but there's a hierarchy here. They start as just like a PowerShell object, and sometimes they build on those types. But you don't need to understand all that. That's not something that you need to know today to use PowerShell or to use pipelines. These are just things that now they're out there somewhere, and when you need to catch those pieces of information again, you'll have an easier time finding them. But don't drown from the fire hose here. There's PowerShell is deep, and we all get there in our own pace.
Yeah, and I think another thing is similar nouns, right? So PowerShell's verb noun. The thing that comes after the dash is the noun, service and service. So get service, set service. Get process, stop process. Things like that are great ways where most of the time out of the box, the pipeline's going to work perfectly for you. And I think you showed earlier that you don't actually have to use the pipeline, but it adds so much value. You're going to see so many examples where people online have used it, and being able to understand what's going on is really valuable. But I think most importantly, oftentimes in IT, we're trying to find one thing and make a change to it. And getting that correct thing is risk-free. You can query things, you can find it. And then whenever you're ready to actually use it, you get the right object, you just hit the up arrow key, put a pipe at the end, and then you do the next part of it. But it lends itself to a really productive workflow where it's less kind of jumping around, where you have all these variables that you're trying to keep track of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great thing about PowerShell, right? There's actually a command, get-verb. And if you type that in, here's what it's going to give you. It's going to give you, again, we're talking about verb-noun. Get is the verb, service is the noun. Get, service. And there's a list. You don't have to use them, but if we're trying to follow the guidelines, follow the things that it makes me laugh every time. I can't get rid of it. Um, Follow the proposed guidelines within PowerShell ecosystem. It means that when someone else starts using your tools that you've made, they'll know how to discover things. They know that if there's a get command, it's going to be something that's going to query but not destroy something. And if there's a remove dash whatever or a set dash whatever, they got to be a little bit more careful with it. And it's just discoverability. If I can get a thing, I can probably set a thing or remove a thing. So get dash verb will give you all of the approved verbs. They also have a group. So here's some of the common ones like add, clear, close, etc. Some of them are more related to communications, connect, disconnect, data, convert, edit, stuff like that. So when you start building your own tools, when you're trying to stay within the best practices of things, get dash verb will tell you all of the approved verbs for the beginning of your commands. Just helps keep things discoverable. Okay, so I want to do a quick recap here. We've talked about a lot of things. We're on the pipeline topic. Let's try to make sure that we cement some of that knowledge, right? So the pipe character is this guy. It takes the output of one command, puts it into the input of another command. The pipe can be used to chain multiple commands together, and we're going to see a demo of that in just a little bit. Um, a command that takes string as an input probably also takes pipeline input. It's not always true. The programmer of that command has to explicitly add it into the command, but if they're following best practices, then they probably did. And PowerShell is smart enough to know what to do with the input you give it. As long as you're giving it input, it knows how to handle. So we're going to look at some examples of pipeline. I was going to go into some where object, select object stuff. But instead, I came up with a little demo here, and I'm gonna try to do a little bit of both as long as I don't talk too much and we have enough time left. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy what I got here because I want to run it in terminal. Okay. Okay. So a pipeline, kind of like a factory assembly line, right? People are doing their one job for this object, and they pass it to the next person, and they do their job on it, and that builds and builds until you've built something. You've all done your little piece of action that has created some kind of output. The same is true of a PowerShell pipeline. It's very much like that factory model. Um, so let's take this as an example. Hopefully this is as good a demo as I feel like it is, and I put this together today. But I've made 3 commands. They are convert to uppercase. So if I do this, might get. So we got convert to uppercase. We've got a little better. What is it? Invoke colorizer, spelled properly, because I'm in Canada. And then, oops, I always hate that one. What was the third one I did? It was add Unicode text. So you don't have to know what Unicode is. I probably could have named it something a little bit friendlier. But basically, every single character, whether that's the English language, emojis, letters from outside of the English language, they have a number assigned to them in an overall index. It's just something that the powers that be have all agreed on, that this character is this number. And that comes into play in a bunch of programming scenarios where maybe you can't treat things like letters. You have to give the actual codes for them. That's not something you need to know. You just need to know that what this command is going to do, it's going to find that number for any character that you give it, single digit, single letter, whatever it is. Um, and it's just going to smash that number onto the end of it. We're going to see that at play here. But these are the 3 commands that I've created. So let's get into it. Let's see this. So let's do convert to uppercase. I've got a lowercase a. I'm piping it to convert to uppercase. I've got to get some spaces in there, not because they're necessary, but because there's a chat about it earlier, and we want to keep our code looking clean. But yeah, that's another thing. There's a question asked earlier about do spaces matter? And in most cases, spaces do not matter on the pipeline. PowerShell smart, it's smart enough to ignore a bunch of white space. So I'm piping a to my convert to uppercase command, and voila, it turned a lowercase a into an uppercase, kind of like magic. So Yes, thank you for the golf clap. I appreciate that. I told you I live for the praise. Um, so that on its own, it's a single function. It does one thing. It converts any lowercase letter to an uppercase letter. Uh, let's take uh, let's take A and convert it to or pipe it to our invoke colorizer, and we'll give it a color of red, and it outputs that A as red, green. Some of these aren't gonna look green. I promise it's working. It's just my theme. Again, I like themes that are as gaudy as possible. But if I was to, there we go, green, yellow, you get the idea. Makes it colorful. One last one. We'll take A and we'll pipe it to add Unicode index. This will all be up on my GitHub. It's very short commands. But now you see it's taken A and it's just stuck the Unicode index number for A onto the end of it, which is 65. I could do the same thing for Z, 90, J. You could do this for a bunch of things. I shouldn't have limited it the way I did because it would have been way more funny to do some GIFs, or not some GIFs, some emojis. And you can get a Unicode number for an emoji, but I made my command forced me to do only uppercase letters for the demo. So that's it. We got three functions. One of them makes it uppercase, one of them makes it a color, and one of them smashes an arbitrary number onto the side of it. These all accept pipeline input. So the output of my convert to uppercase command is an uppercase A. If I then pipe that to invoke dash colorizer, and we'll change it to color spelled properly yellow, we get an uppercase A that's yellow. If we then take that, or if we, maybe I should have done Unicode because I don't know how it'll handle that if I do it in the opposite direction. Lowercase a, convert to uppercase, add Unicode index. It's added the A and the 65, or it's added the 65 to the A, I should say. And then
Someone says they're colorblind. If you could use a more blue color.
yes, I can absolutely do that. Let's do invoke colorizer. I didn't set up a completer for this, but I assume just blue should work. Hey, there we go. So you can see, it's a very basic example, very basic actions that it's taken, but I want to show you that as long as a function is built to handle pipeline input, which they aren't always, but if they're doing it right, they are, you can set up a little factory line. And I forgot that I had a whole thing, a whole bit prepared for you that you've been saved from by my memory, because I was going to do a whole thing about that. Hello, my name is Joe, and I work in a button factory. Except we work in automation IT, and he was going to ask for a series of things that met up with these functions. It would have been great, but thanks to my brain, we've forgotten to do that. That's pipelines. In a nutshell, that's what we're talking about. We are taking input from one, output to another. I'm going to show you a couple more examples just because I want to make sure, there might be some people in the audience that are like, yeah, I get it, Lucas. We've harped on pipelines. It's input, it's output. You're taking it, you're adding it to other functions. It's basic and I get it. But I want to make sure that we all cross the finish line. So I want to show you a couple more examples here. And let's touch on how the pipeline helps us be efficient in our code as well, or when it might not work out that way. So let's do something like this. We've got get service, and if I just run it on its own, maybe I should do this from Windows PowerShell because PowerShell 7 has a bug in it with get service where it sends an error and it's not fun. All right, so get service. It there are multiple services on your computer, maybe get process. I hate doing get process because every example on the internet is get process. But these are all of the things running on my computer. And there's a lot of them. And it outputs one object for everything, every individual application that's running on my computer, every binary file that it's running. And so each one of those is its own object and they've all been outputted to the screen. But maybe I'm just looking for a specific a specific object, okay? Maybe I'm looking for an object called this. We'll do this thing called PowerShell. We'll look for an object called PowerShell. Um, there's a command called where object. And so I can pipe the output of one command to where object, and where object will pare that down. It'll filter it down. It'll say, I don't want every single process. I just want the ones where it matches this criteria. And so where the property, that's kind of hard to see now, isn't it? But for my colorblind friends, I do want to pick one that's whatever. We will have to just do. What about that one? Where object and the property of that incoming object that we want to filter on is going to be, what is this one called? Let's look. Process name. So this is the name of the property that you find right here. So I'm going to say where property process name is equal to, that's the PowerShell equals parameter. So when you're comparing two things to try to see is it true, is it false, dash equals is what we use. Where object property process is equal to PowerShell. Process name. Process name is equal to PowerShell. And so you see it's given me a much smaller number of objects. It's a filter command. We're piping the output of get process into the input of where object. There's a similar one for select object. So select object, the first one we did was where object, and that was filtering which objects were making it through the pipeline. Select object is which properties of those objects we want to filter through the pipeline. Okay, so where before we said, look at all of these objects and give me the ones where this property is equal to something. In our case, it was where the process name property is equal to PowerShell. If we want to do it in a different way, we can say, give me all the objects. Sorry, I went too far. Give me all the objects, but I don't need all this information. I only need process name. I only want to see that. I don't want to see anything else. Select object, property, process name. So I'm telling select object, take the output of get process, input it into this object, and just give me the process name property. That's it. And that's what it does. So it hasn't limited the objects, but it's limited how much information about each object it gives me. There's a whole host of these things. We saw some of these earlier. Get process. We did format list. Format list is basically saying to PowerShell, look, I know sometimes you only show me some of the pieces. I want you to show me all of the pieces. I want to see everything about this object. And I want you to format it in a list versus formatting it across your screen like a table. And so if I did that, it's going to give me a list, some of the same information. And sometimes you got to give it a little asterisk there so it grabs some of the things that are more background properties that even in format list it tends not to put up. There's reasons for what it does and doesn't show. That's for a different episode. But it's got instructions. Someone wrote instructions that said, hey, when they use this process, put these things on the screen. If they try to format it, put these things on the screen. And unless they really, really want it, don't show them these particular properties until they ask for it. That's pipelines, guys and girls. That's pipelines. I think that's pretty much everywhere I wanted to go with this. I did have a demo where we were going to do something like get item, which is a command for getting either a directory or a file. I think maybe it just says files. Well, it doesn't matter. Get a singular item from the file system, the registry, something. So in this case, it's in my burn folder, I have subtleplug.txt. And we'll pipe that to get content, which is a command that gets whatever's actually inside of a file. So if it's a text file, it's going to be able to display it. If it's something like an Excel file, that's not going to display very well. But if we get the content of that, no, did I put it somewhere else? Darn, this is all for you, Andrew. This isn't even for teaching people anymore. This is just for jokes. What was it? PowerShell Wednesday. So yeah, there it is. Yeah, subscribe to PowerShell
Oh
podcast right
gosh,
there, right
glorious. Oh my
there.
goodness.
So that's what I got. Hopefully some of that was helpful. I know some of that was redundant. We went over some of the same concepts a couple of times. I'm sure some of you got it relatively quickly, but we want to make sure that everybody is getting there together. And sometimes it takes a few times. Sometimes you got to do these things before it clicks. But I will put up any of this onto my GitHub, which we'll link. And I'll probably turn some of this into a blog post too. So we'll link that when it's out too. So I'll turn it over to everybody who's here. Are there questions about pipelines or anything else?
Yes, let the questions flow. And I'll say, I think you covered a lot of stuff that was very helpful. You showed us how the pipeline works, and you also pointed to the insane amount of power that comes from the pipeline when you're able to actually use it with things like where object and select object. And you can do things that just are not possible otherwise, and you can be a huge asset to your team, to be honest. Once you can really figure that out, oh my gosh, it's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we love PowerShell, isn't it? It's the enabler.
It's the enabler. Can objects be kit bashed using a pipeline? I'm trying to get an IP address appended to my resolved DNS name. Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, for each object.
Sorry,
I
don't have the chat up here, but there's the chat. Okay. Oh, Justin Grody for the win. Thank you, sir. So let's see. What was the actual question here? We got resolved DNS name that pipe it to $sign that. Can objects be kit bashed using a pipeline? I'm unfamiliar with that term, kit bashed. I'll have to give that to ChatGPT and let it teach me.
Smash two objects together. Okay.
Smash it. Oh, I see. Like kind of just like concatenation, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you can do some of that kind of stuff using the select object. Somebody said the name of the thing. Calculated properties. You can kind of refer to some things, but I think you'd need to use a variable.
Yeah, so if I add IB, this technique is commonly used in model IQ. Yeah, Gilbert's going to explain it to me, and I'm going to understand it. Git bash is when you would take a model, think like Warhammer, and take pieces from different kits to make a whole new thing. Yeah, you can do a lot with PowerShell, and the common refrain here is the answer is almost always yes, you can do it with PowerShell. Sometimes it's should you do it with PowerShell. But one of the let's talk about another command that is really useful with the pipeline that we didn't get into here. I didn't want to bog it down too much with additional concepts. But not every command takes pipeline input. But we're programmers. We don't want to manually write out 10 different lines to do something to 10 different objects all the same way. There's a pipeline command called for each dash object. So if we did something like this, get process, and again, we'll just remind you what it looks like. Do this. No, that's too slow. I'll just catch it. Boom. So we've got get process, and we've got a number of properties, right? We've got handles, NPK, and NPM. We've got process name, ID, stuff like that. So what if we did this? What if we piped it to for each dash object? Okay. And what this is going to do is for every object you send to for each object, it's going to do the same thing to each one of them and output what it did. So just to stay clear on things, let's do select object. Select object, we saw this earlier. It also has another property. You don't have to, or another parameter. You don't have to select a property. You can actually just say, give me the, there's a top, I can't even remember now. Give me the first 10. So rather than the entire list of processes, just give me the first 10 and then stop. So we'll do that, and we'll pipe all 10 of those to for each object. I'm telling you, I'm not getting rid of it. Not gonna do it. For each object. And now each one of those 10 objects is going to come into the for each object command, and it's going to do whatever I put within these squiggly braces. So for instance, let's back up and let's say, how do I tell it to do the thing, do the action, take action on this object? Okay, the first object comes in, do this to the first object. Second object comes in, do this to the second object. The way you refer to the incoming object is either by using $PS item or $_. They're both the same thing, and then asterisk is here for the deeper learning pieces. But PS item or PS_ is how you refer to each of the incoming objects. I usually use $_ because it's quicker, it's less typing. But I think when we're learning PS item, I think it just looks like what it is. $_ is intimidating because it doesn't describe what it is. PS item kind of has a name that describes what we're looking at here. So we're going to say PS item dot, because I'm going to try to access a property of that incoming object. We're going to say process name. And that's it. That's the whole thing that we're going to do. So before we ran a command that was select object, and we were saying only give me the process name property. What I'm doing here is here's 10 objects, and what I want you to output the other side of for each object is just whatever the value of process name is. And that's what we got in return, was that same list of things. So I could do something like, okay, give me the process name and PS item .id. So now one after the other, it's here's the name, here's the ID, name, ID, name, ID. I could take one step further. This is the power of pipelines and for each object and things of this nature, is I could say, okay, I'm going to just make it all kind of print out on one line. And I'm going to say the process name is, and its ID is, like that. Now we got to do something a little extra here. We just got to wrap this PS item dot process name and this PS item dot ID. We got to wrap it in some parentheses so that PowerShell doesn't get confused. And we can get into why at another time, but we're doing it because I said so. So now what's going to happen is for each object it receives, it's spitting out that string. The process name is aggregator host, and its ID is 8048, et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't quite smash things together, but we did take some properties and kind of smash them into the same string. Similar idea here. If you really want to get advanced, in the future, again, this is not stuff that if you're a beginner, you need to know all this. But we can make new objects, our own kind of objects if we want. We do something like PS custom object, create a hash table that is actually going to be turned into a proper object by the PS object
type accelerator.
Accelerator, thanks. Type accelerator. Again, not something you need to know now. It's not on the test, but just to demonstrate a little bit more of the power of things that you will do at some point in your PowerShell journey. We can say that we've got something called the name, and it's equal to process name. And then we've got another property called the ID. Oops, the ID. And it's equal to PS item.id. And so what's going to happen is did I miss a quote? Yeah, I have too many quotes. That's what it is. So this is going to, in that for each pipeline, for each of those 10 objects that comes in, this new created object goes out as long as I've typed everything correctly. Hey, I typed everything correctly. So now I've got a new object. And instead of having process name and ID, I just made properties called the name and the ID. It's not useful other than a demonstration, but that's how you can kind of use the pipeline to smash it together, I guess.
I think what you're showing here is like, it's not that far off. If you understood a lot of the concepts you showed earlier, you find a use case to actually learn about for each object, what you can do and what you can feel comfortable doing is way more. Because say we're taking actions on something, right? You have a process here, and so you can feel okay, so your boss can trust you a little bit. You want to make sure you add logging. Well, all of a sudden you have the framework to be able to add logging without really having to get into too much more complex stuff. It's all kind of, I just love how PowerShell builds on itself.
Same. I did have is this still installed? Or did I put it over here? I did have a backup demo to where I went looking for something interesting because you look at the tutorials online and they're great tutorials, but it's always get process. And it's always some command because you're at the basics. So it makes sense to use some of those basic things. I downloaded a module for accessing a Pokemon API. Okay, so it has a command called get Pokedex Pokemon. But when I run it, what I hoped would happen I'd get a list of Pokemon. Probably a good thing since there's 807 of them these days. And back in my day, there was only 151. But the same command, if I do get Pokedex Pokemon slug and give it a number, we'll just start with 1, Bulbasaur. 2, Ivysaur. So these are the numbers associated to those Pokemon. I wanted a list of all of them, but that's not how that function works. So instead, what I can do, if you've never seen this before, here's I don't need it in there. I'm used to doing that. Let's do 1.151. The dot is basically telling PowerShell start at 1, and then do it. Give me all the numbers between 1 and 151. This is really useful in a lot of cases, but for our basic purposes here, if I hit enter, we get all of those numbers, right? 1.151. It gave us everything in between. So let's take that and let's pipe that before each object. Now, let's see here. I would use, what is it, get Pokedex Pokemon -slug, and then I'll use PS item. And each of the objects coming into the for each command is one of those numbers. But I should have turned off my notifications. I've never done this on Discord before, guys. This is my first time being on audio and video on Discord, all right? Okay, I'm not Andrew Plaw. I'm not the man. I don't know how to do this stuff. And now my friends.
It's just core Bob. That's just core
Bob.
Bob.
It's fine. All right, so what have I done? I've taken all the numbers between 1 and 151. I've piped it into for each object, and I've said for each one of these objects coming in, and each object is just a number, get Pokedex Pokemon -slug, and then that object coming in. And now it's giving me until I get throttled by the Pokemon API, it's going to go through, and for every single one of those objects, it's going to give me the Pokemon that matches that slug number. So that's a use case scenario where, again, it's just silly and fun as Pokemon, but this command didn't offer me the ability to just get a full list. And I don't have to type this out 151 times. I can pipe some numbers to it and have it do the work for me, right? So
glorious.
It is, isn't it? That's it. That's all I got, Andrew. That's
Lucas,
that's the whole lesson.
You crushed it. And I'm very excited to say on Monday, I believe you will be the best for last, capstoning the last PowerShell Summit bar sessions of this year. So excited for that.
I look forward to listening to it over and over and over again until I fall asleep.
Reminiscing at your jokes you made, yeah?
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you.
You got to watch the game footage, because the next time I end up on that podcast, it's got to be better.
That's right. And I'm sure you will be soon enough. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody out there for joining us. If you want to, I'm going to hop on Chit Chat after this. Actually, am I? I might have a meeting in 4 minutes. You know what? We'll be around, everybody. Check out the PowerShell scripting channel. If you want to hop in Chit Chat, we usually do have a good group of people who just kind of chit chat for a little bit after. It's just one channel down on the left. Thank you everybody for coming. See you around. PowerShell Wednesday. We got all kinds of stuff. Lucas, don't be a stranger. We'll see you around.
I'll be here. I'll be here, and there's some great talks in the chat about some subtleties of things. There are things I said today that have got asterisks all over them, and if anyone's going to point them out for me, it's going to be Justin Grody. So check out the chat, and there's some extra knowledge in there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lucas, and thank you, everybody out there. We will see you soon enough. Actually, special PDQ Live tomorrow on YouTube. Check it out. I have a little segment where I'm going to be talking all about PowerShell Summit, in addition to a whole bunch of other fun. I'll put a link. Take care, everybody. See you soon.